Now, earlier on the programme we heard from the Minister for Civil Society, Nick Hurd, about the government plans for a big society. He's here in Northern Ireland today to sell it. Here he is explaining what it actually means.
A really strong desire to try and give people more power and responsibility, not just in their own lives, but in the communities they live and over the services that they use. And yes, a large part of that is encouraging more of the exactly the kind of voluntary and community activity that goes on across the country and United Kingdom, and trying to make that easier.
Well, there you are. How does that go down with community and voluntary groups in Northern Ireland? Paul McErlean is chair of Groundwork NI. He's on the line, as is Sam White from the Lower Castlereagh Community Group. Paul McErlean, you were listening to what the Minister, Nick Hunt, had to say. He talked there about empowerment. He talked about encouraging groups on the ground. Were you persuaded? Would you give him the benefit of the doubt?
Well, I mean, I think as he said himself, Mark, that it's already happening and has been happening for a very long time in Northern Ireland, and particularly in the communities that you were talking about, in the hardest hit communities, particularly in urban situations. So, I mean, it exists. I suppose what big society has come to do is sort of give a name to it, or give the sort of conservative name to it. I mean, I think the most interesting thing that he talked about was the big society bank, because I think, one of the big challenges is finding funding for really worthwhile projects and getting those delivered on the ground. So, I mean, if he's bringing something new to the table on that front, and that and it applies in Northern Ireland, not just in GB, then I think something very worthwhile could happen today.
But were you persuaded by his approach, which was, look, I'm not coming over here really to talk about the big society and to sell it as a concept, because I know that there's an awful lot happening here and has been for many years. What I want to do is come and listen. Now, do you need a minister from across the water to come over here and listen to what you're doing, or are you happy just to get on and keep doing it?
Well, I suppose it's a fairly trite answer, to sort of say, oh, well, I'm here to listen, and that happens regularly. People coming across, they don't want to be seen to be pushing things down people's throats, and, that's understandable.
But he's got a big idea to sell.
He does, but that big idea is already in operation here. So, I mean, I'm not sure there's much new in all of this, which, I think that was the point you were making too.
So is it about rebadging? I mean, that was what I said to him. Look, are you actually going to just try to rebadge something that's frankly already happening and happening very successfully over here?
Yes.
Are you seriously concerned about that?
No. I'm not. I mean, I'm not concerned that he's rebadging it. I'm not concerned that he's adding a new layer to it, or indeed that the Conservative government, the Conservative coalition, is pushing this forward. I think it's a good thing. I think the fact that we're talking about it, the thing that we're encouraging it, I think that it's become part of policy and part of a recognition of that. I think that's a good thing too.
Okay, Sam White, are you optimistic that this could be a helpful visit, and that the big society might have a part to play in making your job easier and making your outcomes better, or are you a little bit wary?
Well, I'm a little bit wary. The people in my community, they don't really understand what the big society really means. And we need to understand that all those issues, at its core, the big society is an attempt to connect the civil institutions that lie between the individual and the state. And those range from family and neighbourhood to churches, charities, libraries, local schools and hospitals. And it is born out of the recognition that our centralised state has become too big, too bureaucratic, and just too distant to support many of those in need of help. And it deters people from playing an active role within public life. And, unfortunately, that, total deprivation and poverty within working class communities. And we see the daily closure of schools and libraries within here in Belfast. How can people work to a big society when they see this?
Well, what did you make of his idea? I mean, he talked very specifically, and Paul McErlean mentioned it there as well. One example he gave me when I asked him to put a bit of meat on the bone, if you like, was the big society bank, which would make it easier for people to actually access funds to deliver what needs to be delivered on the ground. I mean, is that notionally a good idea?
It's a good idea if people really understand that the money is there in the first place. This is the disconnection between the bottom level of society and the state. And we need to understand too that in political terms, this means passing power to the lowest level possible and running public service and reform. so that schools and social services, planning and even prisons are more responsive to the needs of those using them, and social action to encourage more people to play a role in society.
Are you
not just charities, but neighbourhood groups,
yeah,
workers, cooperatives, and social enterprises, and yes, of course, businesses.
Are you concerned, though, that effectively what the big society could boil down to is an attempt on government to get out of some of its responsibilities and to push them onto civic society, to get people like you to deliver something for nothing, which perhaps government in the past has actually invested in and delivered for people itself?
Yes, I understand what you're saying, and I agree that we just can't rely on people as being volunteers within society. This is okay within the more affluent areas within Belfast that we have, where people would have time to be volunteers. But unfortunately, people within working class communities have to deal with the daily rhetoric of deprivation and poverty. So, there needs to be some sort of initiative to bring in some sort of an ethos of empowerment to empower people for the work towards sustainable communities.
That is the big challenge, Mark. The idea that what we're doing here is taking away really vital resources in local communities and asking those local communities to deliver them for themselves without that support. And it's striking a balance between those two things. I mean, the things that we've done in terms of environmental regeneration in some of the hardest hit communities, and community gardens, little playgrounds, turning places that have become waste grounds and into really valuable community resources, and working with the communities to identify what those things are. Those things require funding, as well as the local communities working at them and supporting them, and giving their feedback and providing the impetus to get them done. So it's really about striking a balance, and what we can't do is cut off that funding, because as Sam says, it's absolutely crucial in order to keep those communities together.
Okay, interesting to hear your thoughts. Thank you both very much indeed. Paul McErlean there, the Chair of Groundwork NI, and Sam White from the Lower Castlereagh Community Group.